Hello my spooky bitches, my name is Shannon and welcome to my channel. So this is the spooky season series, maybe once, twice a week, hopefully it'll be twice a week. I will be doing episodes that are Halloween related, just obviously for the duration of October. But I might try and do like some themed months. So I was thinking in like December I was going to do like festive fatalities, and maybe in February, because it's the month of love, I was going to do scorned lovers. So that's maybe what I'm going to do when it's like, you know, like a holiday season. So I'm going to try and do, you know, like a whole month worth of episodes that are related to that kind of holiday season basically. I just want to say as well, I've had like, well, I don't want to say quite a few subscribers because still only like, I think it's 118, which I know doesn't seem like a lot to people, but it's a huge deal to me. And it's just great that like people are actually liking my content, they're actually enjoying how I tell these cases and are wanting to see more. And more so that they actually want to subscribe. And I just think that's really cool and it just makes me really happy. And obviously I wouldn't be able to carry on doing these videos if I didn't have other people's support and I didn't have people actually watching me, because what would be the point if I didn't have people that were enjoying my content? Although I do just enjoy talking about true crime anyway, so for me it is like an outlet. It's a good way for me to channel my thoughts and feelings towards true crime. So yeah, I just want to like welcome my new subscribers and like encourage you all to not unsubscribe. Please, I hope you don't regret it. I'm gonna carry on, you know, delivering the goods. Even though obviously the Toxic Crime Tuesdays thing isn't happening at the minute, I will still be uploading every single week, and at the minute it's looking like it's going to be more videos a week. So I will carry on delivering, and I just hope you carry on enjoying my content. So thank you to my old subscribers, my current subscribers, my new subscribers, all of you guys. Just thank you. It's amazing because I would not be able to carry on doing this if it weren't for you guys. So thanks. So like I said, this is my spooky season series, and I am obviously each episode is gonna be Halloween related. However, with that being said, this episode isn't generally Halloween related. It didn't take place on Halloween. There's no mentions of Halloween. However, it is a creepy case, and the fact that it hasn't been solved to this day. This case happened on 1912, so over a century ago, and it still to this day hasn't been solved, and you know, it probably isn't going to be solved now. This case has everything that I like in a true crime case, which, you know, it sounds kind of ominous, but it's just pretty crazy because there's been numerous suspects, there's been 2 trials, there's been confessions, and still no one was ever actually convicted of this crime. And it was a very brutal crime as well. So just before I actually dive into the case, I just want to say that if, like me, you guys are interested in true crime and for some strange reason you like the sound of my voice, then I highly suggest you click the subscribe button, because I'm here for you guys every single week. So let's dive right in. Just before I get into it as well, I have noticed when I watch back on my videos, I try not to watch my videos too much because I don't know, I make myself cringe so much. Like, I'm just so picky. I look at my videos and listen to my voice and I'm like, oh, my voice sounds horrible. I sound slow. Or I think that I just don't sound intelligent, and yeah, I just try to avoid watching my videos as much as possible. But when I did watch, I think it was my previous video, I noticed that I was jumping about quite a lot. It seems to have gone unnoticed because I haven't had any comments about it, but I just kind of got worried because I thought like, oh my god, people are going to think I'm like off my tits or high off speed or something like that. But I'm not. I'm just high off caffeine. I always have a cup just before I start filming. And I normally have about 3 prior to that, and I have my coffee super strong, and I don't have milk. I don't like milk, so I don't exactly have that to kind of wash it down either. So yeah, if you do notice that I'm really fidgety and I'm jumping about a lot, it is probably just because I'm on a caffeine buzz. This week's case is the Bloody Axe Villisca murders. This week's case is the Bloody Villisca Axe murders. So if you don't know what Villisca means, Villisca is a place in Iowa, in America. And then I noticed that like all of my cases generally seem to take place in America. I need to do some UK based ones, but I think maybe we're just a bit more chill in the UK. Doesn't seem to be as many murders or any that are quite as brutal in the UK, other than obviously Fred and Rose West and the Moors murderers. So other than them, we haven't really had that many really bad cases. There has been a few, don't get me wrong. However, America is far bigger than the UK. So in Villisca in Iowa, it was a very quaint little neighbourhood. You know, the kind of place that you would love to live in when you have a young family. It was those, those dream colour houses that you see in like Christmas films and stuff. You have those like beautiful white wooden houses with the little white picket fences, and it's like a little dog running around, and all the neighbours seem to know each other, and you have neighbours like coming around and bringing you an apple pie and stuff like that. It just seemed to be that kind of neighbourhood. Everyone seemed to know each other. It was, like I said, it was very quaint. It was quiet as well. Like there never seemed to be anything that kind of went down. Like there was no trouble, and there certainly wasn't any murders, especially at this point as well. You know, everyone felt very safe in this neighbourhood, and given the time that it was as well, this is 1912, so people obviously didn't really lock their doors. I think even in the 70s, which that wasn't even that long ago, people wouldn't really lock their doors. They'd just leave their doors unlocked because they never really had a reason to lock them. People generally felt safe in their neighbourhoods, and they never felt like they had a reason to lock all their windows and lock their doors and shut all their blinds and, you know, all the stuff that we all do now. It was a pretty religious little area as well. There was a lot of churches around. Everyone seemed to be religious. And there was just a middle school that was literally just like a few blocks up. You know, it was a very family-oriented kind of neighbourhood that most families would love to live. On one very warm summer's night in 1912, that quaint, quiet little neighbourhood and their occupants would have their lives turned upside down. One of the houses in this neighbourhood belonged to the Moore family. The Moore family consisted of Sarah and Joe, who were husband and wife, and their 4 children. But on this particular night, it was June the 10th, 2 of the daughters of the Moore family, see, I don't really know names because it was so long ago. I only know the names of the mum and dad. So the 2 daughters, they actually had their 2 friends come to stay for that night for a sleepover. In that house, there was 8 of them at that time. And just shortly after midnight, once everyone was all sleeping, a stranger entered the home. Obviously, like I said, the door was unlocked, so he did just walk in. So this man walked through this home, and it is presumed that he went straight up to the parents' bedroom first. He ignored the girls that were sleeping downstairs. He went straight past them and decided to go straight ahead towards Sarah and Joe's room. He made his way up the stairs using an oil lamp so that obviously he could see. Upon entering Sarah and Joe's room, whilst holding an axe, he hacked the couple to death. He then made his way to the children's room and hacked the two boys to death. He then left that room, went back downstairs where the girls were all sleeping and hacked them all to death. Soon afterwards, he upped and left, taking the house keys with him and locked up and went on his way. Obviously, I've said it was a very quiet neighbourhood, but bearing in mind everyone within that household was sleeping at this point, so there may not have really been many screams. They may have pretty much died straight away before they even realised what was happening to them. They were probably dead. So none of the neighbours actually heard anything or knew anything had happened until the next day, when some neighbours become suspicious. And they become quite suspicious because obviously this was a house full of 4 children, and as you can imagine, I have 1 child at my house and 2 dogs, and my house is so noisy. Well, my partner also has 2 children, so that's 3 children, and it is a very noisy household. 4 young kids, obviously it is going to be really, really noisy. And the neighbours found this quite weird because it was dead quiet. They didn't see anyone, out in the garden, they didn't hear any noise. So some of the neighbours become quite suspicious. One of these neighbours in particular actually alerted Joe's brother to basically ask him to go and check on the house just to see if they're okay. I think maybe the neighbour wasn't overly close with the Moore families, maybe they didn't feel comfortable by going in and checking on them, so they called Joe's brother. Joe's brother turns up, he has his own key, so he goes and unlocks the door, and he found that quite strange because it seemed like the family were home. I think their car was there, but the door was locked. And obviously they generally leave their door unlocked, so he has his key anyway, so he unlocks the door, he goes inside, and pretty much instantly he walks in this house of horrors. There is just blood everywhere. First obviously sees the girls because I'm pretty sure they were in the living room, and then he obviously makes his way up the stairs, and then he finds Sarah and Joe, and then he finds the 2 boys. Yeah, I just couldn't imagine like walking into that kind of scene. Like walking into like my family member's home and seeing every single one of them brutally murdered. Oh, that would just scar me for life, and I'm sure it did with Joe's brother. He called the police straight away, and police were just as shocked as Joe's brother when they got there and saw the horrific scene. They could tell straight away that it was an incredibly brutal attack. And it seemed, I think for those kind of attacks, they're generally dubbed as like crime of passion kind of attacks. And with those kind of murders, they are generally by someone you know. So to commit such a brutal crime is generally done out of anger. Don't get me wrong, there are people that have committed really brutal crimes on strangers, but 9 times out of 10, when crimes have been that brutal, it has been by someone that they know. Because of the amount of anger that they had felt to commit that kind of crime, it was determined quite quickly that it must have been someone that the Moore family knew. The police determined that the parents were murdered first, which is kind of strange because it's just like, obviously if you're going into a home to kill the entire family, which obviously this person had done, why would you not kill the first people that you come into contact with, which obviously would have been all 4 of the girls that were asleep in the living room? So I just don't really comprehend that. So it seems like obviously it must have been by someone that they knew, and someone that was very angry with either one or both of the parents. It was determined as well that they were killed with such force. Sarah and Joe were struck, I think it was over 30 times, and the murderer had swung the axe so high above his head that it actually hit the ceiling and left a mark in the ceiling. So it was obviously a very angry, a very personal attack. If no one knew the family and they didn't have any relatives nearby, they wouldn't have known who they were because of how badly all of them were killed. Like, they were unrecognisable. They were literally like chopped up into little pieces. I don't mean to get too graphic, but that's what happened. So again, clearly it was a very angry person. The state of the bodies wasn't like the most concerning part, which obviously it should have been really. So like once they had searched the home, and this was because the murderer had set up some kind of ritual. The murderer had covered up Sarah and Joe's faces with sheets, and the children, he had covered all of their faces with clothing. So it seemed to police that this was some kind of ritual. I don't know, maybe wanting to see, even though obviously they wouldn't have seen him because they were dead, but apparently they were unrecognisable, so I don't know. But he also went through each room in the house and covered all the mirrors and windows with like towels and cloths and tea towels and all that kind of stuff, which is a bit weird. He also took a pack of bacon out of the fridge, where obviously it should be, and placed it in the living room along with a keychain. I don't know, is that some kind of ritual? Is that part of some kind of cult or satanic ritual? I have no idea, I just find that really random. A bowl of water was also found in the home as well, with like swirls of blood in it, which led police to believe that the murderer had probably like washed his hands in this bowl of water just before he left. Once, you know, all law enforcement and all that had been to the home, word spread pretty quickly. Like I said, this was a very quiet little neighbourhood. These kind of incidents have never occurred there before, and it was a very close-knit community. Everyone knew everyone. As soon as obviously they saw the police, and like rumours just started spreading really quickly about what had happened, who had done it. Officials like cautioned all of the people within the community obviously not to go in the home, but as soon as police had left, I don't know why they did it, but like over 100 people had been in and out of the home. I don't know, like, I don't know why they did it. I don't know why anyone would do that. I wouldn't want to go in that home and see what had happened, or because I'm sure obviously they cleaned it up as much as they could, but you know, like, brutal murder had happened there. Why would you want to go and be in there? So obviously, I know they didn't have DNA and everything else there, but you know, they contaminated a lot of evidence by being in and out of this home. I just find it so bizarre, but one of the people in the area who had gone into the home actually took a fragment of Joe's skull as a keepsake. And that I just find utterly bizarre. I don't know why you would do that. I think it's bad enough that these kind of homes are used as like tourist attractions, and I just find it bizarre. I think it's really disrespectful, and it's just horrific. Like, you need to have respect for these places and the memory of the people that lived there and what had happened to them. Like, going in and, you know, like nowadays, I mean more so, like going in and taking pictures and taking selfies in these kind of homes or these kind of areas. I just think it's really disrespectful. And fucking going in to a home just after an entire family has been murdered and taking a bit of someone's skull to use as a keepsake. Like, what would you use it for? Oh, I don't understand that at all. I just think that's incredibly disrespectful, and I just think that's disgusting. Whoever you are, you're probably dead now because this was in 1912. Shame on you. But please don't haunt me for saying that. After this whole attack had happened, police were just scratching their heads, you know, they just had no idea who had done this. And I can imagine in this particular time, it must have been really hard to catch the perpetrators, because obviously now it's quite hard not to, although, you know, there are still people that have committed crimes and still haven't been found, and there's people that still to this day are being convicted when they haven't actually done it. There are people still to this day that have been wrongfully convicted. Generally, you know, with the advanced technology that we have now, it is quite hard not to catch a perpetrator. But in 1912, they didn't have the kind of technology that we do now. They didn't have DNA testing and fingerprint testing and all that kind of jazz. So I don't really know how they did. I think unless you pretty much like, you either got a confession or you're caught them. I don't really know how they did catch people who had actually committed these crimes. So police were pretty stumped. They weren't too sure. There was a few possible suspects. Obviously, with the kind of community that it was as well, there was loads of rumours. They did, however, bring in bloodhounds. What we need to remember is, as well, there was like over 100 people that had already been in this property. So having these bloodhounds in just pretty much proved to be absolutely useless, and they had no success with that. Over time though, a few suspects were named, and one of these being Frank Jones, who was a local businessman, and he had been apparently in competition with Joe Moore, which, you know, that's a potential motive, especially as Joe had worked for Frank's farm sales business for several years. However, he then left and he actually started up his own business, which was a competitor with Frank's. As you can imagine, that probably really pissed Frank off. But did it piss him off enough to want to kill not just Joe, but his entire family and 2 girls that were potentially innocent, that were just staying in that house just for the evening? I don't know. But some people have killed for less. So they're like townspeople. They had all admitted that there was like a deep harboured hatred between Frank and Joe, and allegedly Joe was having an affair with Frank's daughter-in-law. So there was a lot of issues between the two, and they clearly really did not like each other. However, no one in the town felt like Frank possibly had hatred enough to commit such a brutal crime. The second suspect was a man named Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly. Really long name. He was an English immigrant, and he had a history of sexual deviancy and mental problems, and admitted to being in Villisca that very night that the murders happened. So apparently he was quite like a small, fragile, frail man. So that kind of led a lot of people to disbelieve that he was strong enough to be able to, you know, commit that kind of attack. He probably didn't physically have it in him. But there were a lot of factors that police believed could have made him potentially the perpetrator. Allegedly, Kelly was left-handed, and police believed that the person who committed these crimes, in keeping with the blood spatter, that person must have been left-handed. He also was somehow involved with the Moore family. They had history. I don't know if it was negative or positive, but allegedly they had some kind of history there. A lot of the townspeople had noticed Kelly watching the family quite a lot whilst at church and whilst they were just like out and about in town. And just a few days after the crime as well, a dry cleaner had received some really bloody clothes that Kelly had brought in just a few days after the murders had happened. So that's obviously quite suspicious, and it seemed that they were very bloody as well, you know, not just like he just cut his finger or something, like they were covered in blood. And he had also asked police for access to the home just a few days after the crime because he posed as a Scotland Yard officer. At one point, after a really long interrogation, Kelly had actually confessed to the murder. He admitted to killing all of the Moore family. However, I think if, like me, you're really into true crime and you know, you do your research on a whole variety of cases, you may have come across previous cases, especially, you know, years back, where police have been quite harsh with possible suspects and they've pretty much tricked people into confessing. I don't know if that's necessarily what happened in this case, but it was something that was very common. And I had come across a lot of cases where possible innocent people had been convicted because they were manipulated and tricked into confessing even though they weren't actually guilty of the crime. Don't get me wrong, I think if I didn't do something and I was being interrogated for hours and hours, I just would keep saying no. But you've got to think, if you had literally been interrogated for like 12 hours and you're telling the police, no, I didn't do it, no, I wasn't there, like, I am innocent, and the police just aren't giving up, they do not believe you, and they're just going on and on and on, maybe you would be like, oh, do you know what, I did it. Just to shut them up, you know, maybe, obviously, it might be one of those scenarios where you don't really think about the consequences. You just want that interrogation to stop. You want them to stop going on at you. And that's the only way that you see that interrogation ending. Because that's obviously what, you know, officers wanted. They wanted a confession and they weren't going to stop until they got here. I don't know if it was the case with this scenario, but I have seen it happen quite a few times. However, there is still quite a lot of evidence to suggest that Kelly was the culprit. I think with the bloody clothes, I think that's kind of what swung it for me. There's the possibility that maybe it was just a passerby that wasn't necessarily from that area. Maybe they were just driving through, they were staying within that area for a few days, they could have been a drifter, and they were just strolling through and just picked that house at random, committed that crime and then left. For me, I don't think that that is a possibility. That's one theory that I think I least believe, because the type of crime that it was just so aggressive and brutal that I think it must have been someone that had like a close connection with the family. But then, I don't know. But that is personally what I think. Soon enough after this murder had happened, there were quite similar murders within the area that started to happen. There were a lot of commonalities between these murders and the Axe House murders, but they weren't quite as brutal as this particular one. But there were some similarities. So there was always an oil lamp which was always set to low afterwards, which that was the case with the Villisca House murders. Even though there were a lot of commonalities between these murders that were happening and the Villisca House murders, there was no connections made. Police just drew a complete blank, and the case eventually just ran cold. Because Kelly as well, obviously once he had confessed, but he then later recanted that, and when it was brought to trial, he wasn't indicted. Which I don't know, I do find kind of strange, because there is evidence that, but then again it is circumstantial evidence. But then I have seen people that have been convicted and sentenced that where it's only been based on circumstantial, so I don't know, but again, it was a different time. Like I said before, they didn't have the advanced technology that we do now. It must have been a lot harder to catch the culprit. The case ran cold, sadly. No one was ever caught or convicted of the crime, and the house was boarded up. It has never been sold ever since. The house is still very much there, and there have been no changes made to the layout whatsoever. Now it just sits at the end of the street in a quiet, quaint little area with such a sad, brutal story. I don't blame people for not wanting to buy it. I personally wouldn't want to live there. I'm sure it's probably seen as like a tourist attraction now. There's probably loads of people that go to visit it and take pictures, which again, like I said, I just find really disrespectful and just wrong. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that maybe it was Frank Jones, the guy that had, you know, quite a deep hatred for Joe because of their business issues and the fact that he was allegedly having an affair with Frank's daughter-in-law? Do you think maybe it was Kelly because I guess he was seen by the area as a bit of an oddball. Obviously there was that with the clothes, bringing in the bloody clothes into the dry cleaners. He was in that area at the time, and he did confess at one point as well. So, you know, there is some circumstantial evidence there that can potentially points to him. Or do you think it was maybe just a randomer, just a passerby that decided to walk into that home and murder an entire family and then leave, get in his car and drive away? Personally, I think it was Kelly. I just think it mainly points to him. However, I think that Frank Jones probably had more of an actual motive, but he could have been more mentally stable than Kelly, and maybe he just decided to just get over it, just get over his issues. Because not every person kills someone that they really hate. If they did, the population would be a lot less than what it is now. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and thank you so much for watching. That concludes this week's episode of my spooky season, and I will be uploading another one in hopefully just a few days. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fabulous week, and stay safe and stay spooky. Bye guys.